A young woman, her abdomen and pubic area stabbed over 30 times. Her throat slashed deeply from ear to ear. Her windpipe is cut through, where she's almost decapitated. Her internal organs are spilling onto the ground through the slashes in her stomach. This is the reality Alison Botha faced on a dark night in December 1994 in Port Elizabeth, South Africa. Now consider the odds, not just of surviving such an attack, but remaining conscious. With one hand, you're literally holding your head on to keep your gaping throat closed. With the other, you're pushing your intestines back into your body. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, you've got to drag yourself over 100 meters through dense, sandy brush. Her exposed intestines were picking up sand and twigs as she crawled along. Every fiber of her being is in agony, screaming at her to stop and give up. Medically speaking, there is no way by which Alison Botha could have lived. And yet she did. Doctors call her survival a miracle. But this isn't just a story of incredible survival. It's a story of a fight for justice by a spirit that refused to go quietly. What happened in the hours leading up to that horrific event? Who could commit such monstrous acts and why? And how does a person, pushed to the absolute limit of human suffering, not only cling to life, but then face her attackers and ensure they are held accountable? Get ready, because the full, chilling and inspiring true story of Alison Botha is far more than just a crime story. It's a testament to the power of the human will against impossible odds. Born in 1967 in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, Alison Botha grew up in a middle-class family. Her upbringing was normal, and she had a bright future ahead of her. As a child, Alison was known for her bright, kind disposition. She was the sort of person who easily made friends and always had a positive outlook and enthusiasm for life. She wasn't one for drama or conflict. She valued peace and simple pleasures. Her formative years were very stable and normal. This makes what happens to her even more disturbing. She went to school, pursued her interests, and eventually embarked on a career in insurance. It was a stable job, providing her with independence and a sense of purpose. By 1994, at the age of 27, Alison had built a comfortable life for herself in Port Elizabeth. She lived in her own flat, had a close-knit group of friends, and was in a steady relationship. She was a woman very much in her prime, with her whole future stretching out before her. There were no dark clouds on her horizon. She was just living her life, like millions of others. She spent her days working, her evenings socializing, enjoying the simple things of daily life. The night of December 18th, 1994, began like many others. Alison had spent the day with friends, enjoying their company, and making plans for the upcoming festive season. As the evening drew to a close, she drove a friend home, dropping her off at her house. She exchanged pleasantries and goodbyes, even making plans for the next day. What Alison didn't know, as she turned her car towards her own flat, was that dark forces were already at play. Lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity, were two individuals who would shatter her peaceful world into a million pieces. Her drive home that night wasn't just another journey. It was the unsuspecting moments before her life changed forever. As Alison pulled up to her flat in Port Elizabeth, a man, later identified as Franz Dutoit, suddenly appeared, forcing his way into her vehicle. He was armed with a knife. He forced his way into her car. He ordered her to move to the passenger seat, his tone chillingly definitive. Shortly after, another figure emerged, Thunes Kruger. The two men took full control of her vehicle, driving her away from the familiar comfort of her home. They offered a cruel, deceptive promise. They claimed they only needed her car for a short time, then they would let her go. This was a lie, to give her a false sense of security and hope. They drove her to the outskirts of town, to a remote, desolate area near Bushy Park, a place of isolated wilderness. There, the car stopped, and the men dragged Alison out into the thick, unforgiving bush. What happened next was not just an attack. It was a sadistic, prolonged, cruel act. Alison was subjected to a brutal repeated multiple times by both men. The horror she endured was not just physical, it was also deeply psychological. They taunted her, humiliated her, and degraded her. This attack was calculated, an act of power and sadism designed to dehumanize her and break her spirit. After the multiple the men decided to eliminate their witness. What followed was an act of attempted murder so violent it is difficult to fully grasp. France Dutoit used a knife to stab her over 30 times in her lower abdomen and genital area. The attack then, unbelievably, escalated further. In a manic frenzy, Hans Kruger began to hack at Alison's throat. He slashed her throat from ear to ear, not once, but twice. The wound was so incredibly deep that it partially decapitated her, severing her windpipe and major blood vessels. Her windpipe was completely cut, meaning she could no longer speak, no longer cry out, no longer breathe properly. Her internal organs were spilling out from the wounds on her abdomen. Finally, believing she was dead, or as good as, Franz Dutoit and Thinus Kruger dragged her mangled body in the bushes. They left her there, broken naked and mutilated, left to bleed out and die alone. How does any human being survive such an attack? Alison Botha was left for dead, but Alison's spirit refused to die that night. Her inner strength, her courage, her spirit would not let her give up. At approximately 12:30 a.m. on December 19, 1994, Franz Dutoit and Fawn Kruger abandoned Alison's mutilated body in the bushes at Bushy Park Dunes. They left her for dead, confident she would bleed out from her horrific injuries. Her physical state was critical. Her throat was severed twice, her windpipe completely cut. Over 30 stab wounds pierced her abdomen and pubic area, her intestines spilling grotesquely from the gaping wounds onto the dirty ground. She had lost around half of her body's blood volume. Due to her severed windpipe, she could not make a sound, could not scream for help. The skin on her neck flapped open, her head barely attached, threatening to fall backwards at any moment. Miraculously, Alison was not unconscious for long. The darkness lifted and she was shockingly aware. In her own words, a clear, "I'm still here, I'm not dead." Despite the overwhelming agony, another powerful thought solidified her resolve. I do not want my mother to have to identify my naked body in the morgue. Her mind immediately locked into pure survival mode. The stark reality hit her. If I die here, they win. If I can get to the road, there is a chance. She became acutely aware that her windpipe was severed. She could not call out for help. She realized her head was unnaturally lolling backwards. When she tried to lift it slightly, her chin touched her shoulder blades. This horrific sensation brought the full terror of how close she was to decapitation into chilling focus. With impossible strength and focus, Alison began to act. She used one hand to physically hold the skin and muscle of her neck together, essentially holding her own head on. With her other hand, she desperately used her fingers and arm to hold her exposed intestines inside her abdomen. Then she began to move, to crawl and drag herself through the sand and dense bush. Every inch of the crawl to the road was agonizing and painful. She covered an astonishing distance of approximately 100 to 150 meters towards the roadside. At one point, utterly exhausted and bleeding profusely, she lay on her back, looking up at the stars. A profound thought crossed her mind. I might die now, but at least I'm out of the bush. At least they won't find me there. Laying there naked and bloody on the road, Alison saw car lights in the distance. Her immediate thought was one of relief she was about to be rescued. It then turned to fear as she thought, what if it's them coming back to finish me off? But cruelly, whoever was in the car just drove right past. She then blacked out. At approximately 1 a.m., a veterinary student named Tia-Ann Eilert was driving with a friend along the road bordering the dunes. He spotted what he initially thought was a bundle in the road. As he approached closer, the horrifying reality materialized. It was a naked, mutilated woman. Tian stopped his car and rushed to her side. In complete shock and disbelief, he initially believed she was already dead. Her eyes were open, her throat slashed, her abdomen gushing. Then, he he witnessed a small movement. She moved her hand. Realizing she was alive, Tian quickly covered her body with his shirt. He tried to offer comfort, flagging down a passing vehicle for help. The second driver, Hein Yong-Ke, stopped immediately and assisted in contacting emergency services. As she lay there, Alison held on to a singular critical thought. I must not fall asleep. If I fall asleep, I will die. She focused intently on staying awake, Tia An's voice becoming her lifeline. She later described Tia An's presence as an anchor. I focused on him. I was determined not to die with strangers around me. Paramedics arrived between 1:45 a.m. and 2 a.m., utterly astounded to find her conscious and clinging to life. The paramedics were giving her words of encouragement. Fight, stay with us. She was immediately transported to Provincial Hospital in Port Elizabeth. It was a race against time. Upon arrival, surgeons rushed her into emergency surgery, knowing every second counted. Tian Eilert would later speak of the profound impact seeing Alison's will to live had on him, struggling with the trauma for years. The paramedics, too, were deeply inspired by her sheer refusal to surrender. Dr. David Comyn, the surgeon on duty that night, articulated the medical impossibility. I have never seen anything like this. This woman should not be alive. But her physical survival was just the beginning. How does a human being, after enduring such indescribable trauma, find the strength not only to heal physically, but to confront her attackers and seek justice? Upon arrival at Provincial Hospital in Port Elizabeth around 2 a.m. on December 19, 1994, Alison's condition was beyond critical. Her throat was severed twice, cut nearly to her spine, with her windpipe completely exposed. Over 30 stab wounds marred her abdomen and pubic area, her intestines spilling out in plain sight. She had lost over half of her body's entire blood volume and was in hypovolemic shock with no measurable blood pressure. Lead surgeon, Dr. David Comyn, along with Dr. Angelov and their team, immediately began a desperate 4-hour emergency surgery. Their immediate priorities were grim: staunching the massive bleeding, closing her abdominal wounds, and attempting to repair the severe internal damage. The surgeon had to carefully clean the sand and dirt from Alison's intestines in a bowl of water as they were feeding them back into her abdomen. Most crucially, they had to reconstruct her severed trachea and the shattered tissues of her neck. A tracheostomy was performed to allow her to breathe, bypassing her destroyed windpipe. The surgical team worked tirelessly, performing feats that, in the context of her initial state, seemed impossible. After the groundbreaking surgery, Alison was kept in the intensive care unit for over 10 days. She couldn't speak at first, relying on hand gestures and written messages to communicate. Her recovery was a slow, agonizing journey and constant wound dressing changes. She faced multiple follow-up surgeries, including further reconstructive neck procedures, repairs to her abdominal damage, and cosmetic interventions. After 3 weeks, she was finally discharged from the hospital, but her medical journey was far from over. For months, she continued outpatient treatment, including essential speech therapy, intricate scar tissue management, and ongoing pain control. Beyond the horrific physical wounds, Alison carried an immense psychological burden. She experienced intense periods of fear and hypervigilance, an understandable response to such profound trauma. Deep waves of anger and grief washed over her, the emotional fallout of what was stolen from her. Flashbacks and nightmares became a common occurrence in her sleep and waking hours. She began psychological counseling just weeks after the attack, confronting the symptoms of PTSD. Startle responses, hyper-awareness, persistent flashbacks, and severe sleep disturbances became her new, unwanted normal. Yet, even in this darkness, Alison's spirit refused to be extinguished. She adopted a powerful mantra: I choose to live. Even while in the ICU, gravely injured, Alison's resolve was unwavering. Police provided her with a photo album, and with incredible clarity, she identified her attackers. On December 22, 1994, just days after the attack, both men, Franz Dutoit, 26, and Theuns Kruger, 23, were arrested in Port Elizabeth suburbs. It quickly emerged that both had prior violent histories and were well known to the police. Forensic evidence meticulously matched them to the crime scene, irrefutably linking them to the horror. Upon their arrest, both men looked shocked to hear Alison was indeed alive. During questioning, both men provided confessions, later confirming their brutal roles in court. The trial began on June 12, 1995, at the Port Elizabeth High Court, drawing immense public and media attention. Presided over by Justice Chris Jansen, the courtroom was packed, eager for answers and justice. In a rare turn, both attackers actually pleaded guilty, an admission of their heinous deeds. Their own defense team initially withdrew from the case, citing ethical concerns over the overwhelming evidence. Alison herself delivered incredibly powerful testimony, a calm and collected recount that shocked the entire courtroom. Her unwavering description of the assault, her near-death state, and her miraculous survival was central to the sentencing. Both Dutoit and Kruger were convicted of abduction and kidnapping. They were each sentenced to life imprisonment plus an additional 25 years. Initially, parole was a possibility after 25 years, but due to immense public pressure and psychological assessments deeming them high risk, that possibility was later revoked. To this day, these men remained behind bars, a testament to the severity of their crimes and the strength of Alison's fight for justice. Alison's story transcended mere headlines. It became a beacon of hope and strength. She penned a best-selling memoir, I Have Life, 1998, co-authored with Marianne Tam, sharing her truth with the world. Her story was further immortalized in the award-winning documentary Alison, 2016, reaching a global audience. She transformed her trauma into purpose, becoming an internationally renowned motivational speaker. Alison now speaks on themes of resilience, survivor empowerment, gender-based violence awareness, and the sheer power of the human will to survive. Her courage helped shift public discourse on survivors in South Africa and beyond. She became a global symbol of hope and courage, inspiring policy debates around parole for violent offenders and fostering more survivor-centered language in media. Her own words resonate with profound power. They took so much from me that night, but they did not take my spirit. She often reminds us, life is not about what happens to us, but about how we respond to it. And her ultimate declaration, I choose to live. Alison Botha's journey, from the brink of death to a global icon of courage, serves as an enduring testament to the human spirit's capacity to overcome unimaginable darkness.